Thank you everyone for joining our Innovator preview for what's new with Ivanti Neurons 2024.2. Before I pass it over to the product managers to give their overview and updates of what's happening, I just wanted to go through a few updates of what's going on with Ivanti Innovators and other opportunities you have available to you right now. I do want to let everyone know that this call is being recorded. We'll be sending out the recording link once it's ready, and it'll probably be ready next week, so be on the lookout for that. If you have any questions today for the product managers, please keep them to the chat. They have a lot to go over today, so we'll be monitoring the chat, and they'll either be answered via the chat or live on the call, depending on if they see it right away. So just wanted to give that update. And then as for other opportunities happening within Ivanti Innovators right now, this is both for our Engage and Connect platform, so our user groups and then our Ivanti community. Just take a look at there. We have a recording of our Ask the Expert session with Chris Gottle live, so please, if you weren't able to attend that, please take a look. And then we have a few feedback opportunities and betas going on right now within Engage if you're interested in participating. ISS is coming up, so we're doing some informational challenges within Engage if you haven't already taken a look. But then some other upcoming opportunities, we have 2 more Innovator previews this week, one for Neurons for ITSM and ITAM, and another for risk-based and patch management solutions. So if those interest you, please make sure to sign up. I'll put links in the chat for these so everyone's aware. And then just some user group meetings coming up towards the end of the month is the first UWM user group meeting of the year, and then our Women in IT user group meeting coming up on March 22nd. And then one final plug, we're a month out at this point for our Ivanti Solutions Summit. If you haven't registered, please do. I know a lot of our product managers will be there and they'll be excited to see you. I know some people from my team are going. So if you're wanting to meet us, see you there. Alrighty, Robin, I'll pass it to you.
Awesome, thanks Cassidy, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So you're very excited for the opportunity to hopefully meet many of you at ISS. But moving forward then, so we've got an awful lot to show you today. So as we look through, again, it's going to be future looking in terms of our next release upcoming in April. Before we get to that, we are just going to have a quick recap at what was in the last release, or indeed the last year. So 2023 was a very busy year. Again, just a quick flash at some of the features that shipped for part of the Neurons platform there. So tons of value we've been able to bring to the platform there, and thanks for all of the feedback along the way. In terms of the January release that went out, again, lots of capabilities there across our discovery, workspace, healing. So big changes going into app distribution as well, which we'll continue to build on. And what we're going to be talking about today is really the focus from an April perspective, are some of the changes that we're making from a platform perspective. We'll touch on the agentry and policy improvements that we're working there. Rex is going to cover off from a discovery perspective, where we're making some great changes there. We'll recap on workspace, edge intelligence, healing. Again, lots more to come from an app distribution. I'll touch on surveys, and we'll touch on where we're up to from an AI and ML perspective and where generative AI is coming in. We've got Lara giving an update on UWM capabilities, and Chris will round things out with patch management. But before that, we have Utsav giving us an update on a very exciting initiative around our core services. So without further ado, Utsav, the floor is yours.
Awesome, Robin. Thank you, everyone. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening if we have folks joining us from Asia Pac. My name is Utsav Sanghani. I'm a recent addition to the PM team on the Ivanti side, driving what we call as Neurons Core Services. And essentially, the goal of Core Services is to bring about convergence between our various products and build that synergy. So if you go to the next slide here, maybe a representative graphic is this architecture slide will help us sort of understand how Core Services comes into being. If you'll see those horizontal lines that have representative capabilities. These capabilities will span across our portfolio of solutions, and this is really, driving and marching Ivanti towards that platform vision where we're built on top of the Neurons platform across all of these product capabilities and across all of these products in our portfolio, looking at, things like, a unified login experience with one Ivanti login. And I'll touch on that in just a few minutes. Having a consolidated user management and access control capability where, regardless of what part of the ecosystem you are in, if you set up your access control, you're able to have that translate across different systems and really break those quote unquote boundaries. The next piece there is to essentially look at how, with the bedrock of an authentication and authorization capability, how do we build that UI experience, that UI UX convergence, and then be able to allow, a persona based landing page experience, and I'll touch on that a little bit as well, and then being able to consume all of that information and be able to align internally and externally to build consensus around the data that Ivanti is giving you across its portfolio of IT and security solutions. So that's the grand vision. We have a finite number of key capabilities coming out in Q2. So I'm gonna just quickly touch over and just browse over those capabilities here. We do have a beta starting on one of those initiatives, so I welcome feedback and would love volunteers to help us improve that. So with that, if we move to the next slide, please. Oil, or One Ivanti Login, has two phases coming out in calendar year quarter, one, which is this quarter, as well as next quarter. This quarter, we're converging the authentication experience between the UEM product portfolio, the Neurons product portfolio, and the MDM product portfolio. What this really means is if you're authenticating with, let's say, OIDC as a protocol, we're able to essentially converge that login experience. You're not required to log in multiple times. We'll persist those authentication mechanisms across these two capabilities and products. And we have a global session timeout, which means that if you're working in product one and you want to, let's say after 30 minutes move to product two, we'll persist that activity so you don't get logged out, and essentially giving you that unified, authentication experience across the board. We're starting off, as I mentioned before, with OIDC, which is going out as we speak. And then in Q2, we're expanding support for additional protocols, which is primarily SAML and LDAP. I know we have a few Neurons customers who are interested in SAML support. So this is also where Oil is going to start introducing these capabilities. And then we're expanding our horizontal coverage model to also include the ITSM, Neurons for ITSM product line. If we go to the next slide here, in addition to authentication, obviously access control becomes a key part of it. So one of the problems we have today is there is no central unified role-based access control capability. If you are a customer using multiple products, you do struggle to set up access privileges across multiple products, and you have to do that multiple times. So the way we're trying to converge this is essentially bring the UEM and MDM capabilities under one umbrella and be able to have unified access control with the new access control UI, which is the same one that you've probably seen in the Neurons portal. So it's the same Neurons portal, but it also allows you to set up access permissions for MDM. So you have a truly unified experience. This is going to be accessible today, in MDM as well as the UEM portals separately. In Q2, we're gonna merge them together. So regardless of if you're browsing through the MDM capability or if you're browsing in Neurons, you're able to land on the same page. So truly bringing you that converged experience from an access control standpoint. If we go to the next slide. Now, I talked about the bedrock of all these capabilities, right? Authentication, authorization. Now that we have all of that, how do we make sure we truly bring about UI UX convergence, which has been a key feedback item from this forum over the past few months. So what we're working on actively, and I will have a demo for you for folks who are going to be at ISS. We are essentially converging the navigational experience where we're making the look and feel consistent. So when you're switching between products, you're switching between use cases as a specific persona, you're able to maintain that consistency. There's no jarring sort of a jarring experience as it relates to product switching, which can be a bit of a hard context switch. So we're trying to remove that inconsistency, make it uniform across the board, and then have, a set of global settings, authentication, access control, which applies across the portfolio, sort of living in one global location. So regardless of where you access it from, you have a better way to consume it and you can set it up, and really improving the overall onboarding experience with our products. Additionally, we're replacing what currently exists as an app switcher with a 9-pin app switcher, very similar and very analogous to how the Googles and Microsofts of the world do it across their different products. So we're making this more in line with our design, design template and design philosophy. So stay tuned for this as well. This is being seen with a lot of excitement across the install base, and this is coming in Q2 and Q3, targeted for Q2 and Q3 of this year. And then finally, I had one other slide, if I recall. Actually, that was pretty much it for this update, but I do have more, we do have more updates on additional capabilities, which we can bring forth to this forum in a future session. With that, I think that's my time. I'll turn it back over to Robin. Thanks, everybody.
Super. Thanks. That's a very exciting update there. Okay, so first of all, talking from a platform perspective, there's lots going on across the broader platform. First of all, we are bringing some enhancements to the people view. So if you'll recall, in the .4 release, we brought in the device view the enhanced attribute picker. So this is getting access to the full depth and breadth of data services from a device perspective, to be able to build groups, to be able to filter columns. So we are bringing that same capability into the people view. Next, one of the other highly anticipated features of the platform is the dashboard designer. So we have been busy working on getting the initial beta flavor of that one available in customer environments on demand. So that work is still in flight. So as we continue to work through the quarter end and into the next quarter, we're going to be continuing to roll it out, continuing to roll in the enhancements, give it the appropriate soak test so that we can continue to be on a good footing for GA readiness. So again, I know there's a lot of demand and anticipation for that initial functionality. So we're keen to get it into folks' hands as soon as we can. But again, we will continue to work through and communicate out once that is available. So next up is agent management, or policy management in general. And this is an area of really huge strategic importance for us because it's so pivotal to a number of the experiences on the platform. So again, as we continue to bring capabilities from our patching perspective, our UWM perspective, again, having a top of class policy management system is key to maximizing the success of adoption of this. So we have a huge amount of focus on driving improvements in this area. So at the heart of that are some new agent management workflows, and that's just some of the call out items here. So there's an awful lot in terms of brand new UX, new screens, and again, we will be continuing to get early access feedback, continuing to roll those changes in. But some of the headline capabilities this unlocks. So first of all is the concept of coexisting capabilities. So previously, when you want to leverage special case engines or agents on devices such as connector servers, deployment representatives and things like that, they have been designated devices which are allocated to that particular role, but they can't therefore, for example, be also able to be patched or be able to leverage edge intelligence or healing. So part of this work means that an agent can carry any of these capabilities so that you can get the full spectrum of capabilities across devices. Next is enrollment key management, and enrollment keys are how we under the hood assign devices to policies, and that is a back-end service as it exists today. And so by exposing this in the UI, enhances the visibility, it improves the supportability in certain circumstances, in environments where agents are getting perpetually reinstalled over the top. It can lead to exhaustion. So it's really about making it more visible, more robust, more supportable, and providing that ability to be able to regenerate enrollment keys, to tag them against policies. And that really ties into the next piece, which is from a distribution perspective, how do I take the headache out of making sure the right devices end up in the right policy? So the ability to auto register an agent with policy is part of this next tranche of work, and there'll be continuing improvements in this area as we continue to iterate. But that's going to be a key area. The ability to push install as well. So discovering devices, leveraging credentials to be able to push out the agents in a more turnkey manner, and a raft of policy management actions to be able to respond appropriately to devices that maybe have a stuck deployment, or to move devices between policies. So it's really a broad spectrum of improvements across that area. Okay, so next up we have discovery, and I'm going to turn the time over to Rex to talk about what we've been working on from a discovery perspective. Rex, over to you.
Thanks, Robin. As we continue to enhance discovery, we're working on connectors always. Lots of customer-driven feedback on the existing connectors, but we have two new ones that we're working on. One is Verima, or Ivanti Neurons for Service Mapping, and we're bringing and enhancing those settings inside of it. We're also working on a spike of building an outbound connector for ServiceNow. We're working through what that is. It's going to take us more than just this quarter, but that we've started and laid the groundwork for that. Now, in the last quarter, we worked on enhancing all of our connectors that connected to Rapid7, Qualys, and those types of things that bring in exposures. So if we go to the next slide, we're going to add in a view on a per device that shows the additional inventory attributes of the threat intelligence or the exposure views. So with the connectors that we've had from Qualys, Rapid7, etc., in inventory, we have the exposure data, and we're now going to add that into that base view. All right, with that, Robin, back to you.
Fantastic. So over to Workspace then. So from a Workspace perspective, we already touched on the people aspect of this one, that exposing of the attributes for filters. Remote control is, again, a huge area of investment for us as well. So we continue to bring improvements in there. We have already actually bought in the latest version of remote control, which gave that session switching capability. The other piece we're working on, of course, is the ability to disable the end user prompt on a policy basis so that you can choose different settings for different devices. So up until now, of course, it's been a back-end setting that we can change globally. But again, many customers want that capability to be able to say, well, for unattended devices, we just want to have automatic connection, but for user devices, then we do want users to be able to click through from an acceptance perspective. So the team are busy closing out the work behind that one. From a broader device view perspective, so again, following on from Utsav's overview, the MDM convergence aspect, so being able to manage any devices from within the Neurons platform is a key piece of work that the team continuing to work through. We are going to be talking about surveys. I'll give a brief demo on that one shortly, but being able to bubble up the survey score as a part of the overall DEX score is a piece of that functionality. And when it comes to the ability to trigger bots against multiple devices, or trigger a bot against devices, one of the key pieces of user feedback that we've seen recently is, hey, it's great to be able to apply additional layering of the permissions on a per bot basis so that you can control for exactly which users a bot shows up for, but it'd be much easier to manage if we could have that tied against roles as well. So again, we have bought that capability, and that's already there for you to go and assess and use and leverage. So moving on to Edge Intelligence. So Edge Intelligence, there are a number of pieces of work that the team are working on there. So under the hood, of course, you are aware, hopefully, of the edge monitoring capabilities that we've been working on. So a lot of the energy of the team has been going into bringing those policy aligned setting capabilities. So that's going to be something that sits a little bit further out against our July release. So it's not called out on these slides. But again, we'll continue to engage with folks who've been working with us from an early access perspective to be able to test and get early access to those settings as they come through. From a sensor perspective, there are a couple of new sensors and a sensor enhancement as well. So First of all, the login activity performance and details. The login sensor is one of the most heavily used sensors within the broader Edge Intelligence feature. And that's because it gives you that visibility of what is happening in the login process, what's the breakdown. Now, the experience today is very much a drill down experience where you get that qualitative view of what's happening on a single endpoint. So what this new sensor capability will do is the ability to have a look at the elements that make up the login and then understand a fleet-wide view of if we identify a problem component, well, what is the performance of that component. So incredibly useful as you're planning environments, as you're making changes to login scripts or things like that, where we want to be able to understand, well, what's the impact been on the digital user experience. Crash dump summary and details gives us the ability to go and read the mini dumps that are created when an application crashes. So that is really a click deeper than the blue screen sensor that we have today. So this is able to go and scrape that top level metadata off and surface it up. So we have a more robust way of identifying actual crashes of processors and operating system. And then we're bringing out some enhancements to the app state to increase the breadth of data that we collect for that. And so that is the login sensor that we just touched on there. The crash dump summary details. Again, it's going to just be able to output more columns of metadata. And from an app state perspective, this is the key focus behind this one is to take into account AppX instances, which were currently excluded from the sensor. So it accounts for all types of Windows apps. Okay, moving on to healing, and I'll invite Alan, first of all, to talk about the exciting things that are coming from an app distribution perspective. Alan?
Yes, thanks, Robin. So for app distribution inside of the healing module, we have 3 new features, and there are slides that we will go through those here following the header slide here. But the 3 new main things that we have coming out, first is the, yeah, okay. That's fine. Cloud Storage Explorer is the first one here. So what does this mean? So currently in app distribution, you need to create a URL or copy a URL and paste it in when you're doing a file download. And if you're getting it from Azure or AWS, that means you have to open that Azure tool or the AWS tool and go get the SAS URL or the persistent URL on AWS. But now we're making it so that you can just browse right to those the content storage areas themselves. So we'll allow you to put in your credentials within Neurons. Actually, they'll be stored in the credentials area inside of Neurons, and you can just go select that set of credentials. And when you select Azure Blob Storage, for example, it will open up a browser, allow you to go directly to where you have your files stored in Azure and select the file directly. Same thing with AWS S3 buckets. So it's an easier way for you to manage and access your files that you want to be able to deploy through app distribution. You can also upload files through the UI that we'll be providing as well. Okay, the next one that we're adding this quarter is access to Windows Package Manager. Some of you may or may not be familiar with Windows Package Manager, also sometimes referred to as WinGet. WinGet is actually the executable that resides on a Windows 10 or Windows 11 device. Some people are using it already, but what this does is it allows you access, it gives you access to over 2,600 packages that are out there. So it's a very quick way of grabbing content or creating content and going grabbing updates to Google Chrome, for example, as you see in here, or many hundreds and hundreds of other packages. And so we'll have a direct access into that where you will be able to browse Windows Package Manager library and create an app very quickly so that you can be quicker and more responsive to people in your environment that need apps that are already available in that repository. We're excited about that one. And then the last area that we have is exposing the public APIs or making the APIs for app distribution available so that you can start implementing it, putting it into your processes, We have both partners and customers who are interested in being able to put together a process that includes app distribution. So having APIs available to you to use is going to be critical to allow that to happen.
Wonderful.
That's it.
Thank you, Alan.
All right. You bet.
Okay, so next we're going to talk about surveys, and just really to introduce surveys and why we've made such an investment in this from a DEX and bots perspective is because if we consider digital experience management, how can we measure and improve the digital experience of users? Obviously, the key part there is measurement, because you can't improve what you can't measure. And the ability to measure a user's experience falls into the empirical bucket, so the data we can lift up from endpoints, from applications, from metrics. But then the other part of that is a sentiment collection from users. And there's such a wide spectrum of things that we could potentially ask the user about to help solve a business challenge, which is really underutilized by many organizations today, because again, the primary touch point that many organizations will have is the help desk, the post-incident survey, the CSAT, how is the satisfaction with incidents. Whereas if we think about some of the broader challenges that we experience, one might be, for example, the impact of change. So where IT is constantly a world of change when we're rolling things out. Again, what we don't want is for the indicator that something hasn't gone right is a flood of support calls coming in, because chances are that might have been impacting users and impacting productivity for quite a while before that, and indeed impacting more people than those that actually raise a ticket. So again, as an early warning system, to be able to get feedback at the earliest possible point when empirical data is not able to surface that information. That's a key use. The other one could just be to understand the experience with applications. We push applications out, business critical applications. We want to understand the overall experience of it, which, what are the pain points? Are people getting the most out of the software? Where we have licensable software that's not being used, why is that? Is it because they don't know how to use it? Is it because it's just not useful? Do they need something else? Are there problems with it that need resolving? So again, as part of that spectrum of, you've got reclamation opportunities, great, we can go and reclaim it back. But actually, if people aren't using it because they've got a major headache with it, it provides a vehicle for being able to collect that feedback. Again, understanding assets we're providing the employees. Are these good assets or bad assets? When we get to the end of the life cycle, should we replace it with the same again? Should we be looking at different vendors? So part of that, obviously, you're going to understand the cost of ownership of these devices, but also how good are the devices at helping the users to be productive? Are they meeting the user's needs, or are they causing a bottleneck in productivity or creating friction? So again, a survey is an excellent way to be able to collect, to store, to track, and to compare that information between devices. And as we're looking broadly at DEX from a broad brush perspective, we want to be driving improvements. And so being able to understand the benchmark, understand the satisfaction ratings, to have a yardstick to measure against, again, surveys, both by being part of the DEX score, but also from a measurable perspective, they can provide that baseline. So this is really where the survey comes in. I'm not going to spend too long on these slides because I want to jump in and actually show you an overview of the product. But what we're bringing in this quarter is a survey filtering and slicing. The broader rollout of it, we're working towards the ability to run both bots and surveys against people groups. So again, this will be from a constrained set of use cases initially, but it's going to be a foundation we're going to continue to build on as we make our automation capabilities solve a broader spectrum of use cases. Again, some broader examples across healing, across bots here. This isn't necessarily forward looking. This is just a snapshot as we continue to engage with and build out our templates and work with customers and understand how bots are being used again today. These are some of the examples of ways that bots are being used. And as we continue to iterate, the other piece of work that layers on top of surveys is our first use of generative AI on the Neurons platform, which is going to be that ability to summarize surveys at scale. So when we get free text responses, we get thousands of responses coming into a survey, being able to assimilate the key points from all of those surveys, being able to bubble it up at the general view, a per question breakdown, being able to surface the key topics, the sentiment around those topics, and provide those as filter points, which you can click through to be able to get to the raw data underneath. So with that said, let me just jump out of the presentation for a second and I'll show you a super quick demo. So here is an example of a survey that I've already created. If I go and edit the version for this one, you can see under the hood, it is a regular bot. But you'll notice that because it's a bot, I've also got access to the spectrum of device level capabilities as well. So what that means is that these surveys are completely actionable. They can move seamlessly between collecting information from a device, driving actions on a device, interacting with the service desk, being able to create tickets. But what we're doing in the example of this one is we're collecting a range of different information from a device, and this is a device-centric survey. So what we're doing is we're asking the user, we want to understand your experience with this device over the last month. So we've selected that the results from this question will influence the DEX score. So it's going to make sure that whatever the user scores for this one will be tracked and influence the DEX score accordingly. Again, we can choose the question types. Is it a net promoter score type question? Is it a rating? Do we allow starting from 0? Is it stars, radio buttons, emojis? So we have the full flexibility of how this is rendered to the user. And then we have a follow-up question here, which is a sentiment. This is the context. This is please explain the results from the previous answer. And we can use multiple of these. We can construct a survey however we want. But what we do on this one is we can associate the responses. So this free text input is going to be a child of that rating stage. So what that means is that when we look at the results in a second, you'll be able to very clearly understand that the contextual feedback that the user gave, that qualitative feedback, is in response to the rating that they gave to whatever aspect of IT it is that you wanted to measure. Again, if you want to go and add additional buttons into these things, additional questions, it's the same kind of bot flow on that one. We can do the courtesy follow-up at the end. But then we have a brand new stage, which is survey metadata. And the goal for this one is to be able to collect the key columns of information that we either wanted to pass into the bot from an input or collect from these device diagnostic stages or queries, and then store those along with the result. And I'll show you why that is significant as we go and look at the result view. So I go back to the result view. So this is giving me the analytics over time. Of course, I can go and I can choose my time range for these, and it will pivot the data accordingly. I can see the general information. As we bring in the AI analysis, there will be a section at the top here for that. That isn't in this particular drop at the moment. But the filtering, slicing, and dicing, what that gives me the ability to do is to say, okay, so imagine the results I got back from this survey are from my entire org. Now, what I want to be able to do is to filter those results down to key attributes. So what we've brought in is the ability to have a data services picker. So you've got all of those spectrum of device level attributes that you get from the data services picker in there. You also have this metadata available as well, which was that metadata stage that we had within the bot, which is capturing these columns of data that I called out in here. So if I wanted to filter out everyone who had a high latency and see what their satisfaction was, filter by device type, filter by location. So I'm building up these different filtering tags that I can apply to slice and dice the data. I can do all of that. But the other thing I can do is, as well as filtering out results, so I've got a filter for different device vendors. Wouldn't it be great if I could just view them all on the same sentiment graph, so I can see over time across the thousands of responses? Let's compare the overall satisfaction rating of HP laptops and Dell laptops, or let's see the satisfaction ratings of people from different countries. So that's where this pivot capability comes in, and this works exclusively on that data that we collect within the bot. So if I want to go and pivot on, for example, agent overview, the country, this would show me all the results by country. Now this is going to look a little boring here because there's only one device providing information in this particular example. If I choose something different, maybe CPU usage, highest process, you can see you have a line graph, the different legends on the right. So whatever data source you choose, it's going to automatically bucket that data, and it's going to give you a breakdown of the sentiment over time as the people stored those. You also get the questions underneath. So again, you can see that because we had the free-form text feedback as a child, that is shown underneath. So we can see the individual ratings breakdown, but then also get to all that free-form feedback from the users, the ability to filter and slice that. That will also pivot according to the date range as well. And then the per question breakdown, the AI, generative AI will be displayed at this point as well. So a raft of new capabilities in there coming in. So very excited to continue the rollout for that and continue to get feedback, but excited for what that is going to to unlock in terms of satisfying those use cases. So that said, let me just bring the presentation back up and we'll continue moving forwards from there. So again, supporting the survey feature, we're going to be unlocking some dedicated survey templates to provide a quick out-of-the-box way of being able to leverage those capabilities. So some post-patch survey, remote work experience, app installs, updates, and more. And with that said, over to Laura to give an update from a UWM perspective.
Thanks very much, Robin. Hi, everyone. Really quick one from me. We've got an on-prem release, and I'm more than happy to tell you about that if you would like to hear. But I really wanted to come to you with a request. As I told you the last time we met, we are building application control and environment manager capabilities natively into Neurons, and I would love to talk to you if you would be willing to be a design partner for me. I don't care if you've ever seen UWM before or not, or if you are an absolute expert and been using it for the last 20 years. Either type of person or anywhere in between is absolutely welcome. Please do get in contact with me if you have some time at all to look at designs or run through demos with us, because we would really love to have your feedback. Thank you very much.
Super, thank you, Laura. And Chris, over to you from a patch management perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. So we got a few things we're going to be working on for the Neurons for Patch Management release this time around. I'm going to walk through a couple of features. I'll actually steal the screen share from you here, Robin, because I'm going to jump into a little bit of a light demo as well. So we've got we're continuing our work around Linux. We just launched our first release of Linux in the January release. So we're extending that with some additional feature depth. With the change that we're doing, those of you who have used our Linux features on-prem, you know that previously we had a content-based approach similar to how we do Windows and Mac. For the Linux side, we've now switched that and we're doing a contentless approach. That means that basically anything you hook up to the Linux RPM or the Linux repository that you're using will become visible for our product to be able to manage. This makes it so that we get a lot more flexibility in being able to support a much wider set of capabilities. With that, we've got some additional features this release that are going to be getting down into deeper levels of being able to manage by specific package or by a patch group. You basically add the packages you want to that patch group, and those are the things that will then be remediated. So you get to control more of what's rolling out to that. Not a lot to show there. I'll show you a little bit of that, but it's basically just showing that that is in there. In just a second, I'll show you that in the UI. We're continuing the work now that as we wrap up the deploy by package and deploy by patch group, we're going to be getting into deploy by severity. So that won't be in the April release. That'll be coming in July, but the team is already working on that. And as we go into the configuration, you may see some hints of that because I'll be showing you guys our CI environment here. So you're going to see some hints of what they're working on next. That will take a little bit longer because there's a lot more complexities to it based on how all the different Linux distributions basically don't align very well with consistency around severities. Some track severities for things like security versus non-security, others do not. So I'll kind of, you may see some hints of that, but that's July work, not April work. The next item here is bringing in some additional kind of, call it quality of life improvements around our compliance reporting feature. So we've talked to a number of you as we got feedback around what we were doing in that compliance reporting experience. We wanted to make it easier to identify groups of systems and be able to easily create that compliance report based on that. So you're going to see that we're doing some work on there. I don't have anything to demo for that yet. The team is still working on the backend services that are going to enable that. And, you know, basically the front end work is going to be happening next. That part won't be releasing on the specific April release date. It'll be shortly after. But we're planning this to be coming out between April and July. So you'll actually see this before the July release. Just a matter of the team is still working on some of that service level work before they can get to the UI side of it. CVSS v4, this is officially released. We haven't seen much for actual vulnerabilities being identified with the CVSS v4 score yet. So not much to show there yet today, but we are working on and will be prepared for those CVSS V4 scores to start coming out. In typically what we've seen in the past as they've gone from CVSS V2 to V3, 3 to 3.1, there's typically a period of overlap in there. So you would see in the UI as we develop that, we're going to make it so that you can see the highest CVSS score currently available for that particular vulnerability. And if you hover over the tooltip, you can see if there's multiple versions for that, you can see what those older versions would be as well. So trying to make it easy to see what is the latest on the highest level of CVSS scoring, because that's typically the shift that most people follow. And last, we've got some additional things that we're doing around archive, restore, and deletion of different grouping entities that you may not be using anymore. So in patch configurations and compliance reporting, you're going to see this new experience popping up, and I'll be showing this to you here in just a moment. But basically the ability to archive and then delete containers that you're no longer using within the product experience. So jumping into, I have too many windows open. Where's my window? There we go. Here's the product experience. Again, this is our development environment. So you may see hints of things that are not yet in the product. That's because this is just the development side of things right now. But first off, let's go into patch settings. And if I go into one of my configurations that has Linux enabled, I see here the Linux part of my policy is set up. Again, ignore this part, that's future work. But you can see now that I've got the ability to deploy or exclude by patch group. So this gives me the ability to select specific packages and make those packages either included or excluded. So the initial release of Linux support was a scan all, deploy all. The release that we're doing now is getting down into the ability to scan all, deploy everything but specific excludes, or deploy only what I've specifically included in that patch group. So getting into more granular control over that experience. The archive and restore, let's see if I can find one here to play around with real quick, just so we don't mess with anybody's stuff that they're currently testing with. They've got the, that part isn't released here for the patch or the device configuration yet. So let's go over to compliance reporting, where the experience is ready to demonstrate. I knew they would be getting close to that, but I didn't know if they'd have it ready for today or not. Here we can go in and we can show the archive restore. It's going to be the same experience for both this and the patch configuration. So you're going to get the same gist there, but I've got the ability to select a compliance report or a patch configuration, depending on which one you're working with at the time. And I can go in and I can choose to archive that particular configuration. Now, what's happening next is it's going and doing a check to see, do you have any machines assigned to this configuration, or a group of systems assigned to this report right now? If you do, it's warning you that there's you're about to stop using this container. So in the case of compliance reporting, that means that from here on out, you're not going to be doing the report calculations for that. So if I disable this for the next month, I come back and turn it on again because I decide I do want to keep it, then you'll have a month gap in those calculations here, because they won't be having been kept over that time period. So if we choose to archive this, then that has now archived that, and you can see it disappears from my list. So if I want to be able to go and see all of the different compliance reports that I've archived, I can go over here to the report status. Right now it's looking at all of the actives. By default, it's going to hide the archived. Right now, we're going to switch over to only looking at the archived ones. Okay, so now I can see the list of different groups that have been archived and are currently no longer calculating the reporting statistics. I can go into select one of those now, and I can choose to either fully delete that, or I can restore it back to active usage. Now, the reason we did kind of a two-stage deletion on this is, in the case of like, if this were an on-prem product, you would typically be doing some type of backups that you would have control over. Well, being that this is a cloud product, if you delete something, it is gone. So there's no ability to go back to, 2 weeks ago when you did have that configuration there and restore it. That will be gone. So what we've done is followed kind of typical practices for cloud solutions like this and made it a 2-stage. Once the report is archived, you have the ability to come in and even multi-select multiple reports and delete them all at once if you want to. But once you do that, then that report is deleted permanently. So that is the experience. We'll go ahead and restore this one real quick. And that went back to our active list. So now it's back into my list, and we'll start calculating its reporting statistics once again. So those are the updates that we've got around patch management. Let's see, I'm going to stop sharing there. Who did we have up next, or am I wrapping up?
Yeah, no, I think it was over to Q&A at this point, Chris.
Got it.
So looking through the chat, there are some questions in there. So some comments there from Avia. Enrollment key management for auto register agent policy will help a lot with the procedures. So yes, we can absolutely, we can deep dive into those. So the owning PM over those is Ollie Sills. So if you want to get a deep dive into those areas, we can definitely follow up in more details on those out of band. Unless there's some specific questions on those, I'm happy to take those as well. Excited about the Apex sensor. Excellent. Cloud storage. So we have a couple of questions around sharing bots. So today it is possible to share bots between tenants, but only when you have a login to 2 tenants currently. So that's typically something that we use internally from a services perspective. Where you can copy and use a clipboard effectively to copy stages from one bot to another bot. Obviously, recognize that from a customer perspective, that's less useful because the chance of having authentication on 2 different tenants is not going to be the case in the majority of areas. Now, what we do have, our ability to push out bot templates is very lightweight from the perspective. It's not tied into our development cycles. It's not something we have to plan and get our engineering teams engagements with. We can actually push bot templates out of band as part of our management layer. So if you have great ideas for bots, use cases, things to share, probably the best mechanism for doing that at the moment would be to work with Matt or myself. And what we can do is to effectively recreate that bot on an Ivanti internal tenant. We can push that out for early access to facilitate testing. So anyone who wants to be part of that early access testers group on templates, which is a mechanism we already leverage today, and then we can push it out more globally once it's had that soak test. So, but yeah, moving forwards, we'll continue to look at ways that we can continue to turbocharge that ecosystem and make it easier for folks to be able to contribute in a kind of out of band way. But yeah, great suggestion there. I think that was most of the questions that we had in the chat. Feel free to take yourselves off mute or type any more questions, ask any more questions while we have the team on. Appreciate we covered things at a fairly high speed there just to try and get through. If you want to go back and recap on anywhere, happy to go and do that as well.
Alrighty, doesn't look like anyone's typing in the chat or anything. So if we want to end early, if no one else has anything to say from the product management team or customers, we can end a little bit early.